I think that the drinking age should be 18 because people do it anyways, and it's hard to catch. So
My name is Charlie Weiber, and I think that the drinking age should be 18 because there are a lot of alcohol-related, like alcohol poisoning deaths and stuff that happen in people who are underage and drink at in basements at parties. And I think that if the age was 18, then it would bring drinking to the bars in public, which seems a lot safer, where a bartender can cut someone off rather than just letting them die in a basement.
I think that you should be able to drink when you're 18 because if you're allowed to smoke cigarettes when you're 18 and make that decision yourself, then you should be able to drink when you're 18 too.
I think the drinking age should be 18 because if you can fight in a war, you should be able to drink your pain away.
Last fall, a group of over 100 college presidents signed a declaration stating that the 20-year-old drinking age is not working. When the age was raised to 21 in the mid-1980s, the goal was to reduce highway fatalities, but everyone knows that the 21 age limit hasn't stopped minors from drinking. Some experts believe it's actually contributing to an increase in extreme drinking. During a 60 minutes interview with Leslie Stahl, the former president of Middlebury College in Vermont, John McCardell, believes lowering the age back to 18 may seem counterintuitive, but he argues that lowering the age will make kids safer. McCardell then told 60 Minutes correspondent Leslie Stahl that the drinking age being raised to 21 hasn't reduced or eliminated drinking, it has simply driven it underground behind closed doors. McCardell says that the law has created a dangerous culture of irresponsibility and reckless behavior. Chief of Police Mark Beckner at the University of Colorado at Boulder during the interview stated he agrees with lowering the drinking age back to 18 because police aren't in a position where they can stop it, but rather just try to contain it. Beckner then went on to say the abuse of alcohol, overconsumption, and DUI driving are the areas we need to focus our efforts on.
Okay, so two disorders with regards to alcohol use. Number one, most common, is going to be cirrhosis of the liver. This is going to be primarily in individuals who are going to be older. What ends up happening is the alcohol acts as a toxin, and since the liver is an organ that does filter out toxins and detoxifies, what will happen is you develop hard nodules within the liver, and then that prevents blood flow. Because of that, the liver will end up starting to die with the lack of blood flow, and then you're going to have the case where you're no longer able to filter out old red blood cells, you cannot produce bile, you can't detoxify, so really the whole body ends up starting to shut down. The other main one is going to be fetal alcohol syndrome. Obviously that's going to be a problem if mother decides to drink with the last trimester. What ends up happening is that they have found that it causes the nerves within the brain of the child, specifically that of the corpus callosum, to actually commit suicide, and those nerves will then completely almost not disintegrate but shrivel up, therefore blood cannot, or nerve impulses cannot travel. Because of that, there's going to be major issues with brain development, learning disabilities, whether or not they can really function. There's motor incoordination, just as a couple of problems with regards to alcohol use.
I think the drinking age should be 21 because recently my family and I suffered from the loss of our cousin because due to the fact of underage drinking. The driver was under the age and he was highly intoxicated and crashed the car, and 3 of his friends died, and him and another person survived, and he has to be in jail for the rest of his life living with that decision. So I've seen how families can suffer with that, so I think it should be over, well, at least 21.
So alcohol affects different teenagers differently, but in the typical teenage brain, because it's still developing, because the average brain isn't mature until like the early to mid 20s, when your brain is undergoing all of that transition, if you have chemicals like alcohol that are foreign to the brain, acting on areas that are responsible for judgment, especially like your prefrontal cortex, you can actually hinder the development of certain parts of your brain, and you can also be predisposed to addiction. So if you have a family history of alcoholism, it's possible that you could be predisposed to becoming an alcoholic yourself, which means you have a naturally higher tolerance for alcohol. So if you engage in alcohol use as a teenager, you're likely not only to interfere with your brain's development, but you're also at much greater risk of becoming addicted to alcohol earlier in your life. So someone who has a family history of alcoholism who starts drinking as a teenager is likely to use more alcohol to acquire the same feeling. And as your tolerance continues to go up, you could be an alcoholic by the time you're 18, 19 years old. So in terms of alcohol's effect on the brain, it definitely impairs judgment and it's mood altering, and it definitely alters synapses in the brain, but it also hinders development and can be very dangerous, especially if you have a family history of alcoholism.